councils cut litter bin collections to save cash. 0207 862 2222, that's the number. Labour-run Bradford council's proposing making fewer trips to empty public bins in order to save what they say will be £1.5 million a year. A lot of money. It's planning to replace bins in the city centre and other urban areas with larger bins to offset a potential reduction in collections. And here's one of these supersized bins right now. However, Lib Dems on the council say they fear that litter-strewn streets will be the result, increasing anxiety, encouraging vandalism and diminishing pride and safety in the area. The council has to save £40 million a year for the next 5 years to become financially stable. Do you think this is the right place to start or a terrible place to start? Looking forward to your calls on this. Mike, I mean, delaying the collection of refuse, we're thinking rats, we're thinking smells, we're thinking, overflowing bins, which we've all seen all over the country, and rubbish all over the surrounding areas.
I totally agree. Litter is one of my bugbears. I go out at least once a week, usually at the weekends, with my picking stick and go up and down my own street. And I live in a very nice part of Surrey, but you get litter everywhere. Yeah. Have you ever driven up from Heathrow into London? Oh, it's disgusting,
terrible, Yeah.
So I think litter's a huge issue which can improve all our lives. And it's all very well saying, oh, we've got to save money. If that litter flows out onto the pavement, that town becomes less attractive to visit, to shop in, to go and, spend time there because you think the streets are filthy. And the other thing I've got, again, I'll bang on about this, the problem is that local authorities in this country are very bad at running themselves. Several of them have gone bankrupt, several more are predicting bankruptcy. And I think I'm right in saying a huge part of your council tax bill is for the people who work in the council, and I think there's too many of them, and for the pension schemes. So they've got to, again, revisit the spending in local authorities.
So, Carolyn, no doubt that money has to be saved, but is not collecting litter the way to start saving it?
I mean, I think councillors have probably got the worst job in the world because they have to deal with the nitty-gritty stuff that really affects people, and people get quite obsessed, rightly so, with these issues. But when you've got to save money, the money's got to come from somewhere. Now, what I would like to know is, are these bins that much bigger so they can actually, the capacity to keep long? Is there a fallback that if there is a obvious overflow, that they will empty it sooner or they will come and clean up? Yeah. And what is the clean-up that goes on around that bin? But I provided all that, they've done all the ticks and everything is right, and that they can safely and aesthetically have that as a safe option, then I think if that's how they can save money, then we got to go with it.
So you would countenance that move yourself?
I would, provided they have all the checks and balances in place to make sure that it is compliant with health and safety, that it looks kept, looked after, and that they make sure they maintain that and
then you have to sort of think, don't you also, not just the hygiene, not just the smell, not just the risk of slipping over on somebody else's old rubbish, not just the risk of urban foxes, rats and all that, but not just all of that, but also the kind of decline in behaviour which always occurs.
Exactly.
There's a decline in morale and decline in standards.
If it's a local authority, you've got to choose between reducing the number of times you collect the rubbish or closing a library. How do you make that decision? It has to be done on need. The library is a really important part of the community. So if those are the kinds of decisions they have to make, then I would go with actually having extended collection times on the bins.
I'd like to know how much money they make on car parking charges, because that's my bugbear of all local authorities in this country. Where I live, the car parking charges have gone up 3 times in 2.5 years. And they just keep going up and up and up, and they waste that money. You know
what they do with it, because the councils have to account for what they do with it.
Yeah.
And so you don't know where it's going in your area.
Well, it's going into the coffers. Obviously, it's part of the
exactly. But once you go to what you might used to call the town hall, now the civic offices, I see enormous amounts of waste. I just want them to run the thing properly.
They are responsible for so much within our community that we don't actually give them credit for. I mean, part of the council tax is a police precept that goes to pay for the police and the fire service.
And they're looking after old people, of course.
It pays for the care homes. It pays for every public sector we have locally. The council have to find the money for. So they're going to have to cut their cloth. And if this is a way of cutting their cloth without sacrificing a really important community service and whilst monitoring the situation around the bins, then we have to give them the opportunity to prove that they're right.
Do you feel as if we're in a very strange situation where with the budget, we're hearing about billions and billions of pounds, billions for this and billions for that, and then on a kind of micro level where people are really living in their own town or city, they can't afford to pick up the rubbish. You kind of think, hang on, what kind of universe is this where we've got these extraordinarily inflated numbers for everything, and yet something that's got a kind of finite cost, thousands, hundreds of thousands or whatever it is, can't be afforded.
But what you'll find is that the people who are affected by those bins are far more interested in the bins than they are in the budget, because that affects them,
I agree.
their life.
Locally,
like the library staying home, staying open, it affects their life.
I totally agree.
It's a balancing act.
My greatest fear is my bins not being collected every week. You know what I mean? If the council suddenly announced we're going to go every 2 weeks, I'd be the first down the road with a banner saying, no, you come and collect my bins. I don't want foxes in my garden, that kind of stuff.
Let's talk to Beryl about this. Beryl's in Leicestershire. Hi, Beryl. What do you think about the council saving money by collecting the rubbish less frequently?
I think it's an excellent idea if they follow the French attitude towards it. People don't have individual bins in France. They have collectible, big, massive wheelie bins at strategic points throughout each and every village. These are then emptied by the lorries and taken to wherever they take them. There's nothing for garden rubbish. People are expected to take that to the déchetterie, and the way they work over there is absolutely fantastic. They're so helpful. People don't get turned away from the déchetterie. They can take anything and everything.
So just explain, Beryl, your ordinary household rubbish, you know, that now we've got about 7 different recycling bins and garden bins, waste bins. And in I don't know what it's like where you are, but certainly where I live in London, sometimes you can't really walk on the pavement because there are so many different bins taking up, you know, lots of houses chopped into little flats now. So many different households. What happens with your individual household rubbish then in France?
Well, exactly what I said. People take their own general rubbish to these massive wheelie bins that are at strategic points around the village. People know where they are. They go to them quite willingly. They can go with a carrier bag. They can go with a black bin liner. And they leave the rubbish there, put them in. There's even wooden receptacles as well as the wheelie bins. And they are collected then by the lorries. The wooden ones are normally for bottles, and as I say, the wheelie bins for general
Thank you so much.
household.
I mean, you could imagine if that happened here, the enormous outcry from people saying, how am I going to get my rubbish in the bins? Yeah, I haven't got a car, I've only got a bicycle, I've got no bicycle. You can imagine an absolute uproar about it, couldn't you,
People need to get more educated about what they do with litter, shouldn't they? Why would anybody walk down a street, finish a bag of crisps and then just throw it over their shoulder? Why would
we have street wardens in Swansea, they get fined for that. So.
We've got a message from Jenny. Jenny's on Facebook. Thanks, Jenny. And Jenny says, cut back. Have you seen the streets? Where did all the street sweepers go? Who's doing the jobs they used to do? No one. And Rachel on Facebook says, Liverpool have adopted in some places so far underground bins. Apparently, she says, these are the same bins that they have in Switzerland. They also have sensors, so the council know when to go and empty it. In town centres, there are even poo bins in fields that could have this type of technology, she says. That then saves money. So whatever your thoughts are about litter being collected and your rubbish collections, pick up the phone and give us a call. It's 0207 862 2222. Is it a good way for councils to save money by collecting less frequently? Let's talk to Cynthia in Devon. Hello, Cynthia. Morning.
Good morning.
Hi. Is this reasonable, just saying, OK, we'll save money by not coming to pick up the rubbish so often?
Well, the thing that strikes me is I don't like rubbish, but what I'm old enough to want to, how long I've got to travel, and one of the places I'd like to go is Japan. And I understand that they don't have a rubbish collection. Everyone takes their own rubbish home. It's a very clean place. And I just think here, we don't do it at home. We empty all our rubbish, we recycle. Why do we think that in public places we could just scatter stuff around? I mean, what is all this rubbish? it just seemed a bit nanny state to me that people can't be bothered to clean up after themselves. And we need to save the money now. We're obviously all short and a lot of people are struggling. And yet we think we can scatter rubbish around for other people to clean up. It just seems wrong to me, personally.
But this isn't so much scattering rubbish. This is just people putting rubbish in public bins, which is kind of what you're supposed to do. If you're out, you've got rubbish and there's a bin. It's not irresponsible or immoral to put your rubbish in a bin, is it? Or to expect somebody to come and collect it, I suppose.
No, I mean, if you haven't got bins in the streets, the litter will end up on the pavement, won't it? Yeah. So I'm all for having bins. The only problem is these days, as you quite rightly say, there's so many bins.
Yeah,
you put your foot on it, green or brown.
Angela's in Swansea. Hi, Angela. What do you think? Morning.
Well, I just feel at present that there are people making decisions that are paid quite a lot of money. For example, in Wales, these people have made decisions about the 20 mile an hour.
Oh, yes.
And they've spent 33 million on signs, which confuse people. They've had lots of problems with this. And these people are getting extra money as well. We've had more people in the Senate and that we're paying for. And yet the things that we actually need, like litter bins, collections and actual help for people on minimum wages and things are not being done.
Carolyn?
Well, we are giving people on minimum wage a pay rise, and that's come from the UK government. And everything that Angela has mentioned is something which is dealt with by my colleagues in the Senate. They're not parliamentary issues, so I've had no role to play in all of them. But there is a review on the 20 mile an hour, and I think there's a lot more roads which are going back up to 30, but that's down to the local authorities again to actually make that decision. But
£33 million on signs.
Yeah, well,
and all those marvellous acres of beautiful mountain road. I remember driving through the Black Mountains from Abergavenny to Llantony. I don't know, forgive my accent. And not a single car, and maybe the occasional sheep. And why the heck would you be driving at 20 miles an hour?
The legal guidance was up to local authorities, and they decide which roads they wanted to be 30, and it's now up to them to put them back.
How many litter wardens could you have employed for £33 million, which might have kept our streets clean?
Thank you so much, Angela. Later on, it's the papers and everything else.